Vanessa from Tiger Law, and she's going to be speaking to us about how to build strategic alliances that work. This is a conversation I'm really excited for because it's something I need to know about at the moment, and it's a question I had, so I thought, let me go find a speaker, which all of you are welcome to come to me with any questions and say, can we get a speaker in on this topic, because that's actually a wonderful way to do things. So yeah, I've invited Vanessa along to speak because as expert entrepreneurs, we do work alone, but we cannot achieve what we want to achieve alone. We do have to come together with other people, other expert entrepreneurs, to either, collaborate long term or even just short term. And there's a term that my mentor and friend Daniel Priestley uses, and he's called performing a bank robbery. And before you want to get into any kind of formal business arrangements with people which really lock you in, you first want to make sure you work together and can work together, and what you're doing actually has some distance to it. So he says, get together, do the work, perform a bank robbery, and then see what's left at the end of it, if there's room to move forward. It's something that is quite tricky to do, because when you don't know what it is exactly what you're doing, and the marketplace, you're testing it out and you might need to pivot, how do we make sure we've got the right communication in place in the right different areas, all taken care of and communicated? How do we have the right recourse if someone isn't delivering what they said they were going to do to the right quality and standard? That's something I got caught out on last year, receiving things to be published that just I couldn't. It would have taken me hours to sort it out. There was no recourse for me to go back to them and say, you should be sending me professional level finished work here. And it turned quite ugly quite quickly. So it's about making sure when we get into agreements with people that we avoid that. So Vanessa is going to speak to us about all the different ways. Well, she'll tell you what she's going to speak to us about, but that is the topic. So Vanessa, I'm going to stop sharing. Could you just have an attempt at sharing, because I think you should be able to. Click that button. Yeah, there we go.
You guys can see this.
Wonderful. Excellent. Over to you.
Great. Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this group. I was really interested in your introduction, and it resonates with me very deeply. So I'm speaking to you as a lawyer who qualified in 2003, but I'm not employed by anyone else. So I haven't had a PAYE check paid for by someone else since January 2015. And I had a very urgent first year of building the business, which feeds into this topic, because I was pregnant with my third child. I lost my job because I was pregnant, and I was the sole provider in my family. So I had to build my business pretty quickly, and it centered around strategic relationships. So what I'm saying is not academic, it's not from a book, it's lived and breathed. What also resonated with me that Naomi just mentioned, and we mentioned in our breakout rooms, is relationships. It's all about relationships. It is not about the potential legal structures dictating what you do with people. I will always tell clients that what I do comes last. So it's really about having the conversations. It is not about saying, here's a contract, here's how you do things. A good lawyer will say, how do you want to do things? And I'll put that into your contract. So like at the outset of any relationship, I think, you've got to be having very candid conversations, because if you don't, no matter how good your contract, you could come a cropper. And the point is, the bits which are the least comfortable to talk about, they're the ones that if you don't hammer out sufficiently to get them into a written agreement, they'll be the ones that you then come and see someone like me about when you're in a dispute. So my background is commercial litigation. So I would have been the person that you came to see when that happened, and you were trying to dig yourself out of a hole, a financial hole, a reputational hole maybe, and the relationship had broken down, often without anything in writing. But even if there is something in writing, if it wasn't properly advised or thought out at the time of preparation, it may not do the things you need it to do at the point that it goes wrong. So the basic question is, what do you want to put in to any relationship, and what do you want to get out? At the most fundamental level, do you know? That is your first conversation that you're going to be having. What are you putting in? Money, time, assets, designs. These are all things which you're contributing to a working relationship. And what do you want to get out? Probably money, but probably also more than that. As an entrepreneur looking to establish themselves as an expert, particularly, you want to get out a broadening, a widening of your reputation, and introduce yourself to the marketplace as someone who can help their clients. So strategic partnerships can help you do that quite substantially. So when you're thinking about this kind of relationship, the form that it takes will depend on what you each do. For example, I established my business by very quickly realizing, as my belly got bigger and bigger and I was hauling myself around to networking events, that the kind of clients I wanted to work with weren't at the networking events that I was going to. So where were they? And I focused on accountants. The kind of clients that I wanted to work with were either busy running their business, not going to breakfasts, or they were on holiday. And accountants were the guys that these people were already working with. And it was very apparent that if I could strike up a great relationship with one accountant, and that one accountant sends me all their clients, then that effort that's gone into that relationship results in 100 clients. How much effort would it have taken for me to single out and establish 100 different separate relationships? So the strategy for me was, accountants generally don't want any kind of written agreement. They don't want any referral fees. All they want to know is that someone's going to look after their clients properly and collaborate with them on a professional basis. And that worked for me. So when I'm looking at strategic relationships, it's with accountants and IFAs who are already pre-selling me. So by the time they put me forward, I know that their client's going to use me 9 times out of 10. And I've put no effort into finding that client. The effort I've put in has been with the accountant who does my marketing for me. So same or complementary disciplines, designers and website builders, all kinds of different complementary disciplines. Do you refer to each other, or do you get into something that's a little bit more binding? You need to understand what each of you does. Where do I stop and where does that person start? Because if you don't have those sorts of conversations, for example, a designer and a website builder, some of those guys do a bit of each. If you're going to be referring clients to each other, or you're getting into some kind of partnership, it's important to have the boundaries drawn out at the outset so that you're not then having arguments about who's servicing what client and whose client is it. If you're creating intellectual property together, who owns it? If one of you is designing a logo and the other one's building the website that the logo goes on, who does the client ask for the intellectual property? So it's really getting down to what you're putting in and what you're getting out, because the relationship is unlikely to be lifelong. With the best will in the world, agendas change, businesses change. So I think in all aspects of the work that I do, you get in thinking about how you're getting out. And it's a really important conversation to be having, and have it while you're friends, not later. So the income, again, how are you going to split it? If you're going into a relationship with one person, are you going to be splitting it 50-50, or is one of you doing a lot more work than that? So having honest and upfront conversations. So again, it's really down to your relationship. It's not down to the paperwork. It's relationship first, the deal that you're striking, and then paperwork, hopefully. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what a contract is, because people inadvertently find themselves in contracts. And you can do it by email over the course of a few emails, a few phone calls, a few pints of beer. Suddenly you're in a binding agreement. So if you don't know when a contract comes into existence, you're not in control of it. So there are only 4 features of any contract in this jurisdiction at least: offer, acceptance, intention to create a contract, and consideration. Normally money, not always. So offer and acceptance are slightly different to the normal lay language. What does offer mean? It's not an offer to provide services. If you're selling something, your terms of business should say that it's actually the other way around. Because if intention and consideration are there, by the time someone accepts an offer, you've got a contract. And if you've got a contract before you've got written terms under someone's nose, it's too late. They won't be incorporated. So really, you want your clients offering to pay you, you accept it, there's a contract, rather than offering your services and goods. It's the other way around. So if you're having a discussion with someone about how you're going to do business together, and you say, I'm going to do this for £100 a blog, and the other person says yes, you've got a contract. So you can very easily fall into an agreement that doesn't have all the terms in it that really you would want if you're going to go on and do business with that person for a number of years. And we'll get on to what that might look like. But written agreements are always preferable, even if they're not fully comprehensive. Handshakes, it ends up with he says, she says. If you're in a dispute, going through volumes of emails, it's really not a great place to start a dispute. I found this last night. It's slightly odd because I think we can just look at the table column that says positive experience. But I found this quite interesting, and it does talk about values and objectives, and it's not really about the paperwork. Interestingly, this is all about being aligned, and you can't be aligned if you haven't had those honest and open conversations early on. You won't know if your values match if you don't know what the other person's values are. Clear communications. And if you are discussing anything by telephone, it would make sense to confirm by email, and just make sure you've got a little bit of an audit trail, particularly if you are looking at getting into something rather more than loosely working together and referring business to each other. When you look at the reasons for failure, competing agendas, this is why I talked about whether the disciplines are complementary, or could you potentially find yourself in competition with the person you thought you were collaborating with? That's particularly important if you're creating intellectual property and you're introducing clients into the relationship. Because if you're introducing clients into the relationship, you want to walk away with them. But if the other person's offering similar services to you, they might strike up a better conversation with that person. So you don't want to be competing. You don't want a value mismatch. So if one of you is very keyed into environmental issues, for example, and you find out the other person is doing stuff which is environmentally unfriendly, waste disposal, something like that, and you've got a logistics company, you may find actually within time you don't want to be doing business with that person. I turned down a client who had a hunting company, and I hadn't realized that until into the second meeting, and I turned that down because I did not want to be working with that company, for example, as a lawyer or as anything. Lack of communication. the conversations that you need to have can be uncomfortable. So often people just don't have them. That's one way of failing to communicate. Another lack of communication is not having regular catch-ups, particularly if you're working remotely, which you probably are if you're not in the same business, or you might be anyway, even within the same business. But just going quiet and not being accountable is a pretty big reason for any kind of business relationship to fail. And one person feels that they're pulling all the weight, which leads to a lack of trust, and then the partnership will fall apart. Things have to feel very carefully balanced. And when you start looking at the documents that govern these sorts of relationships, they are hammered out to the nth degree. So a very high level list of the kinds of things that you should be thinking about. And as you can see there, all joint ventures are contractual unless they're companies, harking back to the handshake. Who owns what? How are you allocating profit and loss? Is it 50-50? How are you making decisions? If there's an even number of people and you can't decide on a majority, let's say, you've got a deadlock. How are you going to resolve that? Will it kill the partnership and everything you're trying to achieve? What does a breach look like? Moving next door and setting up the same business, bad-mouthing you, using your intellectual property, going after your clients. What does it look like? Taking more money out of the business than that person was entitled to. So common, all of this, as an ex-litigator. Dispute resolution is a nice one to get into any agreement. For example, you might want to refer to your accountant, or you might want to refer to some alternative dispute resolution provider like CEDA. How and why would it come to an end? Is there a shelf life to this? Is it for a particular project? Is it ongoing? Is it 12 months? What happens? What if one person wants to leave and the other person wants to crack on with the same business, same clients, same assets? Do you need to buy that person out? So you can see that you're thinking about the end right at the beginning, so that you're making plans for that, so that you don't fall out. So I have shareholders who come to me, maybe there's an age difference or difference in life priorities. One wants to exit, the other wants to carry on, but can't afford to buy that one out. You know, these are important conversations to be having. And tax treatment. So money in, money out. How does it affect you personally? And what's the overall purpose of this? To grow and create your own profile, your brand. Why are you doing this? Or are you creating something that you want to sell off on the market later on? A different way of getting into a relationship with someone is a limited company or an LLP or a bear partnership. Bear partnerships can be handshakes or written down, but you are individually liable for everything you do. There's no buffer between you and the big bad world. If you are a limited company or a limited liability partnership, you've got a buffer. So that's a legal person that gets into your contracts for you, and you stand behind back here, somewhat protected. If you're going to incorporate a company, the shareholders can either be your existing business or you personally. That's a tax question for you. I find that limited companies offer a much more clear-cut regime for taking decisions than perhaps a contract, which might be a little bit more open to interpretation. For example, shareholders get votes in accordance with their shareholdings. Pretty simple. It's all regulated by the Companies Act 2006. I would always recommend you have a shareholders agreement as well, particularly if there are even numbers of owners, because you can get into deadlock again. You can have different classes of shares. You take your money out at different times, depending on what you want to do with it. And then the next thing you need to think about is directors. these are completely different hats that you're wearing. Directors don't need to be shareholders and vice versa. If you are, and you are all wearing all the hats, then you need to decide how the board will run. So the board of directors are the day-to-day parents of the company, if you like, the human face of the company, and they have to act in the best interests of the shareholders in the company. The shareholders are the members, but they're not doing day-to-day stuff. They get votes on the important stuff, but generally it's the directors running the company. So when you get into a joint venture company, the shareholders agreement takes a somewhat different form, so that each business coming to it and coming together normally will have at least one director on the board, and the voting is worked out at director level, and then there will be shares underlying that, and you work out what shareholder consent looks like. You might have a majority minority, you might have 50-50, but overall, a limited company, in my view, gives you a buffer against the big bad world, and it gives you maximum clarity because you're not making it up from scratch, whereas a joint venture contract, you are somewhat making it up. You're trying to think of everything and putting it into a contract. If you're a limited company in this jurisdiction, you already have a bunch of rules and you're already protected to some extent. So, for example, if you're a minority shareholder, you can't be ridden over roughshod. It's an offence. So you're already somewhat looked after. You can also sell a company much more easily. So if you're looking for an exit at the end of it, you've got something in a box that you can give a buyer. And if you have organised that that thing has got ownership of the intellectual property, the client list, everything that you've worked so hard to create, it's all in that box. You sell that box with the thing in it. So it's a very clear-cut way of getting in and getting out of business with someone. But there are conversations that need to be had along the way. As always, what if you fall out? What if one of you wants to exit early? What if one of you dies? How are you going to deal with that? That's a big one for me, because if you have shareholders in a company and you haven't got anything robust in writing, one of you passes away, the survivor will end up being a joint owner of that company with the deceased shareholders' beneficiaries. That's just going to happen. So it's definitely worth thinking about. But generally, it gives you a really clear-cut way of building value with someone. And it's not necessarily any more expensive to get into. You've just got some basic annual accounts to do and a couple of bits of admin on company's house, but you're protected from the contracts that it gets into that you're not otherwise in other kinds of setups. Referrals are probably the most relaxed way of getting into a relationship with someone, and it's really how I built my business. So I would speak to accountants and persuade them to give me a client or two to test me out, and they would hopefully like me, and they would start sending me more and more clients. Never asked for referral fees. Accountants aren't interested in it, in my experience, but it meant that I was then speaking to people like Michelin-starred chefs. I helped one buy a restaurant in London. We have a couple of global authors, multi-generational engineering, family companies. So we do a lot of planning with them about them having founded, and at the other end of that journey, what are they doing with their companies? I would never have met these people if left to my own devices. So it's critical to understand who is already working with the guys you want to work with. Who can you persuade to start sending you their clients? That's what this bit's about. And they will do your marketing for you. So, for example, I was out here on a Monday meeting the senior partner of a large firm of accountants. And I think he was quite alarmed when I waddled into his office. That was on the Monday. On the Wednesday, I was in hospital having my baby. 10 days later, he started giving me a client or two. He then replaced a very large, very expensive provincial law firm with me, which was incredible. And it set up my business. And I started working with clients that I would not have had access to otherwise. So the conversations that you're having then are not with the clients directly. They're with the people you know can send you the clients, so you can prove your worth and be a safe pair of hands. Because if someone is sending you a referral, you're trusting them, and they're trusting you with their reputation. And likewise, if you're sending your clients elsewhere, you've got to have a relationship of trust. And it takes a little bit of a slow burn at the beginning. And then suddenly, once you've done a good job a couple of times, that should blossom and it will cement itself. And like Naomi was saying, it's about that relationship that you're having, the conversations, the better than warm leads that you're getting are created out of those conversations. So it's a very high level way of working between disciplines that aren't in competition. And actually, I have referrals from law firms who don't do some of the stuff that we do, and they do some of the stuff that we do. We just have very clear conversations. You send me the clients for this, I'll send you the clients for the bits that I don't do, and we will not poach each other's clients for the bits that we both do. But that's a very open conversation that you have at the beginning, setting out the parameters. But generally, it will be people who are in different disciplines to you. It builds your network. You can then say to a client, well, I can't do that, but I know someone who can. And the client just benefits from having that breadth, but you are still the number one person that they speak to. And referral fees, we now do a lot of residential property. Agents want referral fees, get it in writing, always. Because then you know where you are, you know what's owed, there are invoices, it's taxable either way, and it's predictable. I wouldn't shy away from either kind when building my business at the outset. Naomi, that's the end of what I'm saying about strategic partnerships from a legal point of view. Number one being conversations and relationships. Number two, or possibly further down the list than that, the legal documents. Shall I talk quickly about me and what I've done? Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Muted again, sorry. Yeah, about 3 minutes, if that's all right.
Yeah, don't worry, I'll whip through this. So Yaz, who's on the call, produced some slides for me, which are just brilliant. But I started in-house legal back at the beginning in 2015. At the beginning of 2017, I had enough accountants referring work to me that I needed to start a law firm proper, because they wanted stuff that only authorized law firms can offer. I started an HR company at the same time because my clients were SMEs, and I thought, why send them down the road to what I consider not great advice to a national retainer company? So that's going on. Tiger Byte started a couple of years ago. It develops legal technology, software solutions, particularly in property. It's out on the market now, being bought by panel managers and property law firms. That's very exciting. And that comes back to the dashboard that we mentioned a little bit earlier. And Sesame, I co-founded with Yaz, who's on the call, which offers a holistic approach to startups, basically. So your legals, HRs, but also design, marketing, sales, bookkeeping, insurance, and so on. So it's all in one basket. Pixie Moves is a pure property law firm that should be getting authorised by the regulator any minute now, we hope, which is using the technology built by Tiger Bytes. And last month we did a residential completion, normal, standard property, from offer to completion within 7 days, Friday to Friday, not 3 months of pain, misery and suffering. So these are the companies: Tiger Law, Electra, Tiger Bytes, soon to be Pixie opening its doors, and Sesame. Yeah, so that's us. Hopefully that was under 3 minutes.
Fine. Yeah, it's all good. All good stuff. Wonderful. Thank you so much for that, Vanessa. I think we've all got an absolute ton from that. We are now going to go to another breakout session where we're going to have, just checking, yeah, we can still have 10 minutes in there. What I'd love for you to do is to take that 10 minutes just to get to know each other, but also to figure out what kind of strategic alliances might you be going into in the future or currently, and any questions that you might have for Vanessa. Start picking her brains. We'll have about 10 minutes for that. But Robert, yeah, nice. We'll see you again soon. It's 8:30 a.m. over there, so he's got his normal 8:30 a.m. meeting. Good to see you. And yeah, so I'll pop you into breakout rooms, have a chat, have a think about some questions, and then we will have about 10 minutes questions with Vanessa. Anybody have any questions for Vanessa based on her wonderful, informative talk? Or do we just all have a nice little chit chat?
I'm melting, actually. Ooh.
Whose voice was that?
I do. I like the thank you, Vanessa. It was very helpful. I'm thinking of talking to somebody about doing business together. So I like the idea of doing it under a limited company. I know you did touch a little bit about it, but any more information about that? The pros and cons.
Yeah. So the cons are that you are creating something which needs a bit of looking after. So you're going to probably want an accountant to help you with the annual returns and those sorts of things. It's a little bit of admin. I don't think it's too heavy, actually. From my point of view, I think the pros outweigh the cons somewhat. So the pros are that you are creating a legal person. So we all as human beings are natural persons. A company is a legal person, and a legal person is able to enter into contracts, can get itself into debt without the owners being in debt personally, and provides a very robust buffer. It also cosmetically, I think, can look more established as a business. If you're a limited company, for some reason, optically, that can be beneficial. And you can VAT register it or not, depending on what you're buying. It can be beneficial to register for VAT even before you've hit the threshold. It also gives you a set of articles. If you do it from Companies House yourself or an accountant does it, they'll just use the model articles. I would suggest you read through and make sure that those rules which are in there about decision making, meetings and so on suit you. Now, a shareholders agreement is a private document, and that can go into much more depth about your relationship and how you want that relationship to go. That does not go on Companies House. So you have a very well-established regime that a limited company sits in, but you can tweak it over here in your shareholders agreement. I'm trying to think of more cons apart from the admin. I suppose it's the same con for anything that you're getting into which is more formalized. You are thinking about what's going to happen when the death knell sounds. How do you get out of the business? Because shares have a value. So you need to think about what you're doing with the shares, what you want your partner to be able to do with her shares. But but you're thinking about different concepts, shares or profit share in a partnership, but you're having the same conversations really. So that's not a disadvantage of a limited company itself. That's just something that you should be doing getting into any kind of partnership. I like limited companies because they're easy to work with. With limited liability partnerships or partnerships, you have a different tax regime. So you're personally taxed on the profits. So I would always encourage anyone who's thinking about this to be taking accountancy advice as well. Because actually I'm number 3 on the list. Number 1 is having your conversation with your prospective partner. Number 2 is your accountant. 3 is the lawyer. Most lawyers like to think they're number 1. But it's your relationship. It's your relationship and your deal and your life.
Yeah.
So it's your friendship with your partner. Then it's how do you deal with the money, which will hopefully be large enough to result in some tax. Boo. But you want to think about that first. And also, depending on how you want to exit from it, for example, if you are a director and shareholder and you sell up, you get to take advantage of some entrepreneurs relief. Are there other considerations which are important to you? And then you can decide.
Cool. I have a question.
Okay, thank you very much.
I was like, I need my question. I've been waiting weeks to get my question asked. Sorry. I want to ask you, like, if you're definitely sure this is going to be your company and you're not going to invite anybody else in as a shareholder, director, and you're inviting them in to deliver services for a set period of time, and their presence in your business is, there's a reputational issue because obviously you're going to be they're going to be part of the face of your business, etc. So you want them to be in for that longevity and you want them to deliver a good quality. What would you say are some of the things that you would need to look out for in that respect in terms of the written agreement you want to put together?
So number 1, if you're not employing them, but they're working for your clients and delivering work on your behalf whilst under your brand umbrella, consultancy agreement. Please, please, please. That will set out rights, roles, responsibilities, liabilities. Thinking about IR35, you want to set up a genuinely self-employed role. So there are features within a consultancy agreement which set it apart from a contract of employment. But crucially, you will be protecting your reputation. If they make a mistake, they're liable. You're protecting the property and the clients. You're protecting your intellectual property, your confidential information, all of those things. But there's a termination provision in there, and you've got control over that commercial relationship. You can put restrictive covenants, much harsher than in a contract of employment. So you can really protect yourself. You put those in a shareholders agreement as well. So that, then you can say, if this pans out over 3 years or whatever, I'd like to give you some equity. You then don't give them any of your shares. You create a different class of shares, perhaps that has no voting rights, just a right to dividends over time. You may or may not want to share the value of the company when you come to sell it. So you can have quite distinct rights, but you're giving someone a really nice benefit there for sticking with you, and so they can feel invested in the company. If they leave, it comes back for nominal value, you know, those sorts of things.
Yeah. And what if they're they're still operating within their brand and still, so you would then have like the referral as a commission agreement. Would you make it all one contract, or would it be multiple contracts that you'd have?
Well, I need to have a long conversation with you over a coffee. Again, that's really down to how you want to play it. If you do have clients that you're essentially, your clients, you're referring to them under the consultancy agreement, you want to be very careful that those clients remain your property and not their business property. If there is a different source of revenue moving between you because you're referring clients to them, for them to work with doing the thing that they do that you can't do for those clients, and you get a kickback for that. That could go in the same agreement very easily. It's not really about the agreement dictating what you're doing. It's about picking apart how the what ifs work out for you.
Yeah. Cool. All right. And I would ask the question, how easy can I just figure it out myself and not hire a lawyer? But that would be stupid. That's a silly question.
Well, you probably can. Please don't go to Rocket Lawyer and places like that, because a lot of them use contracts which are not for the UK jurisdiction. You can do a lot of Googling, and you can sense check it with a nice lawyer, or you can pay a lawyer to do it from start to finish. Again, it really depends on the value of what you're doing and what your potential losses are. The bigger your potential loss is, the more important it is to set up properly.
Yeah, so you can draft it out as much as you can, everything you can think of, and then bring it to someone like yourself. And then, I'm just thinking, like, the time you've spoken it all through, there's a lot you can come up with yourself, in not putting it in words, but the facets of it that will actually speed up the conversation and make it
exactly. So the first thing I do is ask clients to give me their shopping list. Give me your shopping list of what you think should be in this contract, and I'll do the rest.
Cool. Yeah. Brilliant. All right. Thank you, Vanessa. So people can obviously connect with you on LinkedIn. Do you want to put your URL for your LinkedIn in the chat box?
Yes.
So people can find you. And power of LinkedIn. I just found Vanessa on LinkedIn a couple of months ago. I think I found your colleague or something, and she said you were the person to speak to. And like, just the synchronicities between us and the match is just, it just proves the power of LinkedIn. It really, really does. Right, so let me share my screen, and I will we'll wrap up. So for those of you who are new, who haven't met me before, and haven't had a LinkedIn profile and strategy session, please do come and have one. You can book in using that link, or you just go to the first bit of that URL. It's a 30-minute session via Zoom, and what I'll do is I'll take the time to learn about you, what you want to achieve in your business, and how. And then I will tell you exactly how you want to be putting that on your LinkedIn profile in the best possible way. And you're more than welcome to take those ideas and use them. But if you do think, actually, I can't do this myself, then obviously I can do it for you. And the strategy session in there is really, really important, because it's how you're going out to market and how your message is. So do come and have a conversation with me, take that offer up. Coming up, we've got Morten Patterson next on the 1st of July, talking about pricing and how to set the right prices. I should have actually asked him what the title is, because I just put setting up. I think there's a better title available to us than that, but it's going to be in depth. And we do have some previous recordings of his of different talks he's Could I just ask everyone to mute? Who needs to mute, please? If you have a particular question for Morten that you've been pondering since the last time he came to speak for us, then do just send me a message, because I can pass that on to him. After that, we have Sim talking about why your gut health is the health of your business as well. That will then be the end of our season for this season, it's an academic year in the UK. And then starting again next year, we'll be starting on Friday, the 9th of September and running till Friday, the 16th. So those dates there just tell you the start and the finish. Do put them in your calendar and do, like, obviously the repeat event. But just when you hit the January and you hit the after Easter break, just make sure it's in sync, because otherwise we'll miss you. And I know some people can't come because they had it in their diary as a repeat, but didn't take account of the fact that we stopped at Christmas and that moved the week over. As many times as I did tell them, actually, but then I said a group announcement, so who knows who hears that. So do maybe just take a screenshot of that. I will also send that out via email in the next couple of weeks as well. But obviously love to have you here for the new term. Love for those of you who can to jump on that train from London. I say London because most of you are above or within it, or just not in the country, which I apologise for. We will be meeting on Wednesday, the 6th of July, big day out in Portsmouth. Vanessa, it'd be great to have you along if you're able to get down. It's just an hour and a half from London, and the train station is literally where that blue bit of the Spinnaker Tower is. It's like just behind there. So the train station's really close, direct from London. So all really easy to do. So yeah, do come down for that day if you can, just an hour and a half out of London. And you can do lots of work on the train, so it's okay. Everybody, like, I think most people work well on trains. So like when I say it's just an hour and a half, it can sound like a lot, but actually when you think you could do work on it, it's actually, it'll fly by and be really productive time. I'm just trying to persuade everyone to come. So then the 1st of July is our next session. So without further ado, I will stop sharing. If anyone has anything they'd like to say or announce or let us know about, we've got 5 minutes before the official end, but we can finish earlier if you want to.
I need to go and see Anna. I'm going to Ascot tomorrow, and there are things behind Anna that I desperately need to put on my head.
Yes.
Please.
You better get on the train this afternoon. She's down here in Portsmouth as well.
Oh.
So you have to like post or something. Get on and do it.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, disaster.
Yeah, I need to post more on LinkedIn. That's what I need to do, so people will know.
Have you made all those, Anna?
Yeah.
Wow.
They're incredible. How lovely.
Amazing.
Yeah, like when it's big events coming up like Ascot, we need the build up to make sure we've given ourselves enough time to order them.
I need to do now, get ready for Woodwood. That might be people around here that they will go.
Yeah, and Ebor is coming up in York in August. 4-day racing, massive racing meet, quite well known. And
Wow.
St Ledger at Doncaster. My fiance does all the food safety for all the race courses, so I can let you know when all because he's always flipping there. He's always there.
To know the calendar for next year to get ready.
Yeah, we should talk, Anna.
Yeah.
There you go. There's a strategic relationship that just came out of this meeting.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Anna, you know you can get a hat to Vanessa by using Royal Mail next day before 1 o'clock delivery.
You need to try them.
I'll be on the Prosecco by 11 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Good for you.
Anna, I was just going to ask you that actually. Does someone have to come in to be able to get a hat, or can they actually measure there and you do it that way? Because I measured for a hat yesterday. Vanessa, your person, I can't remember her name, Sandra phoned me up and I was sat there with a tape measure like this. And because I was measuring for my graduation hat, actually.
Yeah, that can be. Yeah, I mean, all of them, they have the measurement. Usually it's 57, something like that for women.
Yours doesn't work like that.
But it's just the style, because I do bespoke. So I always like the people to choose the ones, try a few of them, and then for a few of them, I'm making the one.
Damn it. Why didn't we have this meeting a few weeks ago?
I tell you what you could do, Anna, strategic here, is if you were to do get very vocal on LinkedIn, you can have a special day in London, hire a nice room in a hotel.
Yeah, go with them.
Bit of champagne,
100%.
and people just come along and choose their hats.
But you know how many people are in London doing what I do? It's just.
Yeah, but it's you.
I know.
Anna, that doesn't matter at all. Do you know how many FBOs there are in London? Over 2,000.
Well,
we still, have our own clients and they still come to us. So don't worry about that.
And you know what, Anna?
Right.
I have never seen anybody on LinkedIn going on about great hats and races and needing hats for this and how to choose the right one. And hey, this one's really good. And this one's got great PR because it won at Ascot. And like all of the things that go into great hats, I've never seen anyone taking that position on LinkedIn with it. So, I think and then because it's going to be so visual and fun, then obviously more people will connect who are interested in hats and need hats. And therefore,
but I had a client that she came and she said, I don't know what kind of hat it will fit. I said, I don't know either. You need to try them on. And she tried 6 and all of them completely different. And all of them, they were amazing on her. So that's why when the people say, oh, because your face, you have to wear this and that. I don't trust that. I don't believe that. You can wear everything that you want.
So don't talk about that. Just talk about style and the way it shines, why you want to wear a hat.
Yeah.
It's not a wedding.
So this time next year, I'll be posting pictures of me wearing your hats on LinkedIn and everywhere else.
Yeah.
I know.
Because if you think about it, if you run with the races conversation, you also pick up all the wedding conversations as well. So you intercede with some wedding stuff for the mother of the bride and the dad.
So Naomi, that's one place that you've got your new client, if you like, Anna, who you can help trying to get into LinkedIn like you did with me.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Already helped her a lot, I think. Already, she's been around a while. But Anna, I think you're going to try and come to the July, aren't you? Hopefully.
Yeah, but I'm not very good doing lives at the moment, so I think I need to get more confident with that.
There's no 60-second pitch. You're just going to come and have a drink and some food and hang out. So you're all right.
Well, I will come into the meeting anyway. I will try my best.
Anna, make sure you're wearing a hat.
Yeah.
I will wear a hat on the 6th.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, I have an appointment with the ocean. I'm going sea swimming now.
Okay.
Gonna get the high tide. I was washed out in the mud. Cool. All right, everyone. It's 2:00, so officially ending. So I'll see you all next time, 2 weeks from now at 12:30.
Bye. And I'll see you on Monday, Louise.
Oh, what are you two doing?
We're both going to three principals conference. So we're actually going to meet each other in person.
Is this in London?
It's in that London.
And what's Three Principles?
It's what I speak about. That's my coaching methodology, I suppose you call it.
Okay.
But
so
it's a first in-person conference I'll have been to because they've all been on Zoom. So this is the first live event.
Oh, you two enjoy.
Yes. We get to hug and everything.
Getting highly excited. Well, I've been so busy this week, but if I'd had time, I'd have been highly excited. So now it's Friday, I'm getting
now it's time. Woo!
And that's Friday. You know how we're getting the community off and going, and I keep saying that, but now we're really getting off and going. It's my MBA got in the way. I do demand a photo of the two of you meeting for the first time.
Okie dokes, we'll do that.
I've got a lovely dress, but I haven't got a hat. But I have got a lovely dress too.
So make sure you've got the app on the phone, the Circle app, so that you can post directly up your photo. We want to see.
Yes,
Circle's on Android yet. When are they going to do that?
I don't have that app.
Is it not? Because I'm on Android as well, I'm afraid. So if it's not on Android, I can't do it.
No, Circle. Because I looked at community apps and I went for Mighty Networks because it was on both Android and Apple. I couldn't remember what they were called. Just Apple. Can't remember their name. Yeah. So yeah.
That must be on its way because they got.
But I will take my laptop with me, so I might be able to.
Or just do it the next day.
I might be able to do it from there because I will be trying to do a bit of work in between or noting inspirational ideas down or something. So
brilliant. Well, enjoy your train rides and think, gosh, another train ride. I'd get a lot more done. Oh, I should go to Portsmouth on the 6th.
I can't. I wish I could go. I'm in Lake Garda on the 6th, so it's too far to get a train, sadly.
Well, it is too far for you.
Definitely.
Well, John's going to get
lovely. I need to hang out the washing. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. To Lake Garda.
I like the thank you, Vanessa. It was very helpful. I'm thinking of talking to somebody about doing business together. So I like the idea of doing it under a limited company. So I know you did touch a little bit about it, but any more information about that? The pros and cons.
Yeah. So the cons are that you are creating something which needs a bit of looking after. So you're going to probably want an accountant to help you with the annual returns and those sorts of things. It's a little bit of admin. I don't think it's too heavy, actually. From my point of view, I think the pros outweigh the cons somewhat. So the pros are that you are creating a legal person. So we all as human beings are natural persons. A company is a legal person, and a legal person is able to enter into contracts, can get itself into debt without the owners being in debt personally, and provides a very robust buffer. It also cosmetically, I think, can look more established. as a business. If you're a limited company, for some reason, optically, that can be beneficial. And you can VAT register it or not, depending on what you're buying. It can be beneficial to register for VAT even before you've hit the threshold. It also gives you a set of articles. If you do it from Companies House yourself, or an accountant does it, they'll just use the model articles. I would suggest you read through and make sure that those rules which are in there about decision making, meetings and so on suit you. Now, a shareholders agreement is a private document, and that can go into much more depth about your relationship and how you want that relationship to go. That does not go on Companies House. So you have a very well established regime that a limited company sits in, but you can tweak it over here in your shareholders agreement. I'm trying to think of more cons apart from the admin. I suppose it's the same con for anything that you're getting into which is more formalized. You are thinking about what's going to happen when the death knell sounds. How do you get out of the business? Because shares have a value. So you need to think about what you're doing with the shares, what you want your partner to be able to do with her shares. But you're thinking about different concepts, shares or profit share in a partnership, but you're having the same conversations really. So that's not a disadvantage of a limited company itself. That's just something that you should be doing getting into any kind of partnership. I like limited companies because they're easy to work with. With limited liability partnerships or partnerships, you have a different tax regime. So you're personally taxed on the profits. So I would always encourage anyone who's thinking about this to be taking accountancy advice as well. Because actually, I'm number 3 on the list. Number 1 is having your conversation with your prospective partner. Number 2 is your accountant. 3 is the lawyer. Most lawyers like to think they're number 1. But it's your relationship. It's your relationship and your deal and your life.
Yeah.
So it's your friendship with your partner. Then it's how do you deal with the money, which will hopefully be large enough to result in some tax. Boo. But you want to think about that first. And also, depending on how you want to exit from it, for example, if you are a director and shareholder and you sell up, you get to take advantage of some entrepreneurs relief. Are there other considerations which are important to you? And then you can decide.
Cool. I have a question.
Okay, thank you very much.
I was like, I need my question. I've been waiting weeks to get my question asked. Sorry. I want to ask you, like, if you're definitely sure this is going to be your company and you're not going to invite anybody else in as a shareholder, director, and you're inviting them in to deliver services for a set period of time, and their presence in your business is, there's a reputational issue because obviously they're going to be part of the face of your business, etc. So you want them to be in for that longevity and you want them to deliver a good quality. What would you say are some of the things that you would need to look out for in that respect in terms of the written agreement you want to put together?
So number 1, if you're not employing them, but they're working for your clients and delivering work on your behalf whilst under your brand umbrella, consultancy agreement. Please, please, please. That will set out rights, roles, responsibilities, liabilities. Thinking about IR35, you want to set up a genuinely self-employed role. So there are features within a consultancy agreement which set it apart from a contract of employment. But crucially, you will be protecting your reputation. If they make a mistake, they're liable. You're protecting the property and the clients. You're protecting your intellectual property, your confidential information, all of those things. But there's a termination provision in there, and you've got control over that commercial relationship. You can put restrictive covenants. much harsher than in a contract of employment. So you can really protect yourself. You put those in a shareholders agreement as well. So that, then you can say, if this pans out over 3 years or whatever, I'd like to give you some equity. You then don't give them any of your shares. You create a different class of shares, perhaps that has no voting rights, just a right to dividends over time. You may or may not want to share the value of the company when you come to sell it. So you can have quite distinct rights, but you're giving someone a really nice benefit there for sticking with you, and so they can feel invested in the company. If they leave, it comes back for nominal value, you know, those sorts of things.
Yeah. And what if they're still operating within their brand and still, so you would then have like the referral as a commission agreement. Would you make it all one contract, or would it be multiple contracts that you'd have?
Well, I need to have a long conversation with you over a coffee. Again, that's really down to how you want to play it. If you do have clients that you're essentially your clients, you're referring to them under the consultancy agreement, you want to be very careful that those clients remain your property and not their business property. If there is a different source of revenue moving between you because you're referring clients to them, for them to work with doing the thing that they do that you can't do for those clients, and you get a kickback for that, that could go in the same agreement very easily. It's not really about the agreement dictating what you're doing. It's about picking apart how the what ifs work out for you.
Yeah. Cool. All right. And I would ask the question, how easy can I just figure it out myself and not hire a lawyer? But that would be stupid. That's a silly question.
Well, you probably can. Please don't go to Rocket Lawyer and places like that, because a lot of them use contracts which are not for the UK jurisdiction. You can do a lot of Googling, and you can sense check it with a nice lawyer, or you can pay a lawyer to do it from start to finish. Again, it really depends on the value of what you're doing and what your potential losses are. The bigger your potential loss is, the more important it is to set up properly.
Yeah, so you could draft it out as much as you can, everything you can think of, and then bring it to someone like yourself. And then, I'm just thinking, like, the time you've spoken it all through, there's a lot you can come up with yourself, in not putting it in words, but the facets of it that will actually speed up the conversation and make it
exactly go. So the first thing I do is ask clients to give me their shopping list. Give me your shopping list of what you think should be in this contract, and I'll do the rest.
Cool. Yeah.